Hi, this is Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative, and my project today is kind of a different take on using the layering stamps that are popular right now. And this is the one, a Beautiful Day stamp set from Altenew that I'm going to be using on some Arches cold press watercolor paper there on the left. This is the very first stamp set that I used in the very first project I did on YouTube, so I thought I would break it out again since my second anniversary is coming up here soon. Now I'm going to be using the 4 layers for the flower, and then the 2 of the 3 layers for the leaf. Now I've got some coordinating ink from Gina Designs that kind of goes from light to dark, because as these layers become more detailed, you want to go darker with your ink. So I'm going to start off with my lightest pink, which is Bubblegum Pink, and the solid flower stamp, and I'm just stamping it onto the watercolor paper, and I'm going to stamp this, I think 3 times total, just to get a fairly solid impression of the flower shape on the watercolor paper. And then I will move on to the second layer, which is slightly more detailed, and I will move up in darkness level with my pink ink. So here's the second stamp, and I'm going to be using Dusty Rose just on the outside edge of this stamp, and then I'm going to use Lemon Drop in the center. And here's where I do something a little bit different. I am going to spray this with my distress sprayer about 4 times to get it pretty wet, and then I'm going to stamp it on top of the first layer. And then this is the third layer, the most detailed layer, and I'm going to go darker again. So I'm using Passionate Pink on the outer edge, and then I will be using a Wild Dandelion on the center once I clean it off, and spraying it with water again. And the fun thing about this is that by spraying it with water, it really softens down the details of the various layers. So if you line these up, slightly off, you're not going to really notice with this technique, especially like if you do what I'm doing now, which is just spraying the stamp with water after you've cleaned it and just pressing it down, because that's going to help the details soften on the watercolor paper if you get it fairly wet. I did let it dry between that layer and this layer, which is the very final, most detailed layer of the flower, and I am only going to stamp the center because the outside edge is really just an outline, and I don't want that on this kind of soft effect that I'm going for with this watercolor version. And then that's the first layer of the leaf, and I am inking that up with Applemint, just like I did the solid layer of the flower. So I'm not spraying water on that first layer of the leaf. And I'm going to restamp that middle of the detailed layer on the flower 3 times, because I'm really just trying to get like a hint of shading on the center there, and that's about it. And then I'm going to go to the second detailed layer on the leaf and go to Jelly Bean Green ink, and then I'm going to start spraying again. Stamp that down, and then I'm going to ink it again, spray it again, and then stamp it again. And it's going to feel a little too detailed, so that's when I spray that with some water again and stamp it again, and that really helps some of those details soften up quite a bit once you do the clear water on the watercolor paper over the ink. And then to clean up the edges, anywhere where it really went nuts and bled a lot, I used my white glaze pen. Now these are all my components. I have my greeting, which is from the Penny Black A Sweet Day stamp set that is stamped in Wild Lilac ink, and I die cut that out using the second smallest die in the Dotted Scallop Rectangles die set from Elizabeth Craft Designs. This is Lemon Drop cardstock that I've die cut out using the Stitch Circles die set from Elizabeth Craft Designs. My card base is 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 out of Wild Lilac, Gina Designs cardstock. And then you see I've got 3 flowers total. And then I have that little metallic heart that I've punched using this tiny little heart punch. If you've watched my channel a lot, you know I use that quite frequently. It's a great size. And then I have 6 leaves. I will actually only use 5 of them. And then this one I have cut that top leaf out of kind of carefully to make it just look a little bit different. And then you can see how I've cleaned up the edges with my white glaze pen. And you'll notice 2 of those look a little bit different, so I'm going to show you how I did that with my flower. I took my clear sparkle marker from Spectrum Noir, and I colored over all the pink portions of the flower. Very loosely. I wasn't trying to be super precise or anything, just to get a really nice glittery sheen over the entire flower. And it kind of cleaned off the tip on my finger because it did get a little pink. And now I'm going to add some prills around the center, or they're actually mini prills, around the center of the flower middle by dotting my Art Institute glitter glue around kind of randomly, as you see there. And then I'm going to sprinkle that with the mini prills. These are lemon chiffon mini prills. Press them down a little bit to just make sure they get into the glue and set that aside to dry. And now to assemble the card, I'm putting ATG adhesive on the back of my lemon drop circle, and I'm going to adhere this down slightly to the right of the center on the card front. And now I've added adhesive tape from Elizabeth Craft Science on the back of the flowers and the leaves. And I have not put that much adhesive tape on the back of them. I use the adhesive tape because this is watercolor paper and kind of heavy, so the adhesive tape does a great job holding it down. But I don't like to put adhesive all over the back, because when I adhere floral arrangements together, if parts of them aren't adhered down, then they kind of stick up off the paper just a little bit, and it adds some very subtle dimension to the arrangement. And so I always do things that way. And then you'll notice how each of the flowers is slightly different from, they are all a little bit different from each other. I think the upper two are a little bit more detailed than the lower right one, and that kind of had to do with the amount of water that I sprayed onto the stamp when I stamped it. But then also by changing the direction that they're facing, that helps kind of cover up the fact that they're all really the same. You know, you would notice if they were all kind of all pointing the same direction, but by kind of shifting them around, you don't notice that so much. So that's kind of a fun trick. And then on the very last flower, I'm going to put foam tape to bump it up above the greeting. And then my last touch is to put 3mm adhesive tape on the back of that little tiny heart and adhere it into the upper right of the greeting, as you see there. Now I did want to really quickly show you what the flower looks like when you just stamp it normally versus the watercolory versions that we have in this project. You'll see that the normal version is a lot more finely detailed than the watercolor version. And I like them both, but I think it's kind of a fun new way to try using your layered stamps, particularly if you are afraid that you aren't going to line them up real well. This kind of helps soften out those details and cover up some of those mistakes. So I highly encourage you to try it out, especially if you're a little bit scared of those very detailed layered stamps. And that's the completed project. I was really, really happy with how it came out. I love the prills on the flowers. I really like the softness of the look of what I'm guessing are peonies. And just the color combo makes me smile. I love purple, pink, and yellow, and green. I don't know. It's just fun. So I hope you liked it too. And if you did, please give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment, because I love getting comments. As always, supplies are linked in the video description and over on my blog. Here are 2 more videos I've done in the past, so please check those out, including my very first video that used that same stamp set. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would really, really appreciate it if you would do that. I would love it. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a great day.